Hello, and welcome to another Energy Magazine exclusive author interview. I'm your host, Catherine Krupka, Director of the Energy Medicine Professional Association. And I'm very excited to introduce you to our special guest author today, Cheryl Pallant. Cheryl earned her PhD in somatic writing and is a healing touch and Reiki practitioner. She's also a teacher, dancer, and a published author. Her Body Listening, Cheryl's most recent poetry collection, reflects on the culmination of her healing touch training. A nonfiction book she wrote called Writing and the Body in Motion, Awakening Voice Through Somatic Practice, shows Cheryl's innovative approach to developing body awareness and achieving self-discovery and well-being through movement, mindfulness, and writing. Her most recently released nonfiction book, Ecosomatics, Embodied Practices for a World in Search of Healing, which I've purchased and can't wait to read, discusses how healing ourselves and enacting inner change contributes to healing the planet. Cheryl teaches at the University of Richmond in Virginia. She also leads workshops and a meditation group. She sees somatics, energy healing, mindfulness, and creative practices as essential in awakening our body's interdependent relationship with the earth and to providing a way forward in this very pivotal moment on the planet. Cheryl, I am so excited to have you with us today.
Thank you. It's so great to meet you, Catherine.
It's a pleasure. And I just reading about your new book had me so intrigued, both about the embodiment aspect of it and about how our inner work really helps this larger world. I'm torn right now as we start our questions because, of course, I'm super curious about ecosomatics, which actually just came out a few days ago. And I'm also really drawn to the somatic writing, especially now that I've learned that that is the subject of your dissertation. But let's start with ecosomatics. Embodied practices in a world in search of healing. What is ecosomatics? And so let's talk a little also about how it ties in with energy medicine and healing touch.
So ecosomatics is an emerging field, so it's fairly new. And it's about the overlap between somatics, so the subjective experience of the body, along with ecology. So it recognizes that the nature is not so much outside. I mean, it is outside, but it's also inside, and that there's an interdependent relationship, which I think a lot of energy healers kind of already know, right? So that, you know, if we know that our energy field expands, well, pretty far out. And when we start expanding out, we're also starting to pick up on everything else that's out there, not only other people, but, you know, a dog, a wolf, a bird, a tree, and everything else. So really my premise for the book is the more we do work with ourselves, the more we're connecting with, I'll call it nature, or the more that we work with nature, the more we're connecting with ourselves. But at this pivotal time of climate crisis, it's really important work for us to be doing, along with the fact that so many of us are traumatized or dealing with some sort of ailment, not just, you know, a minor irritation, but something more chronic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I think somatics brings up for a lot of people now is work with trauma, right? Like somatic experiencing and many methods that are really focused on getting us in the body and working with, you know, all variety of stuff from there. So if we sort of look at, I don't know, that idea and apply it to your thinking about how we work with ourselves and the environment, does that, are you also touching on that?
Oh, I definitely talk about trauma. I mean, you know, one of the things about trauma, those who've experienced it, in order to survive it, there's a degree of dissociation that has to happen. So they're not in touch with the present moment or their body or their environment. And yet the route to their health is to do those very things. So whether they're getting, they go to a body worker for help, or they go into nature and connect more immediately with their senses. So, they need in particular, those who are traumatized, to reawaken the senses, connect the senses to the present moment. So it's by rooting in that present moment with all its richness that gets us not only to be present, but allows the flow of vitality to take place. So imperative work for all of us. I mean, in many ways, these days, who isn't traumatized? It's to what degree of trauma have you experienced? So, and then are you able to be present with yourself, and then present with, the larger self in your environment? So,
You had mentioned your background as a dancer, which is, of course, a very embodied expression. How has your background as a dancer led you to this work, or how does it influence your understanding about all of this?
yeah, so my background, I'll say how I got to be dancing, is because when I was 13 and about to enter high school, my doctor recognized I had a scoliosis and said, "Oh, you're probably going to have to wear a brace or a cast," which is not what somebody entering high school wants to hear. So, and he also said, "And you're going to be in pain for the rest of your life," which is a great thing for a doctor to also say. So I went through high school with wearing an invisible brace so that I didn't have to wear the real thing. I figured if I just kind of kept myself as stiff as possible. And the pain did get worse until I got to college, and there was a creative movement class, and I just tempted. I said, I'm going to do it. And so ever since then, I watched my pain level go down, 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 and my appreciation, my connection to living go up, up, up. And the thing about, and I was doing improvisational dance primarily, and then a specific form called contact improvisation. But what happens when you start getting involved in dance circuits is that you're exposed to all different types of movement modalities, whether it's Feldenkrais or cranial sacral therapy, So, I was always being introduced to how do you be more in your body and what else is going on. So most of us have limited cognition of what's going on. We're like, oh, I'm hungry. Oh, I'm tired. But, can we feel the fluctuations? Or as people in healing touch know, like, we're sensitive to those tiny micro events because that gives us really great information about how to do the healing of a client. So it came about through that. And then, so dance was pivotal. And then working with a Korean shaman kind of also kind of got me over, can't call it a hump, but pushed me into the healing work, because I was living in Korea and was writing an article on a shaman there. She was one of the most famous shamans in the country. And she turns around and said, basically, enough about me. You need to be a healer. And I'd heard that before. So, and I discounted it when my friend said it, but coming from her, who was a survivor of North Korea and a 79-year-old woman, I said, okay, I'm going to look into this. So like about a year later, when I returned to the States, I looked into this, like, what kind of healing do I do?
So it really feels like you are so integrated in all of these different aspects. I hear you talking about how a health issue led you to dance, led you to your healing work. Your writing is involved in this, and and you communicate about all this through your writing, it feels like everything is in such flow together for you.
Yeah, I like that you use the word integral, because my meditation group that I co-lead is called Integral Meditation Group. So
Well,
you just summarized it in some ways right there. So yeah, you've got to bring it all to, I mean, there's reason for specialization for sure, but for somebody like me who's got abilities in so many different fields, like writing, for instance, it's been really a wonderful practice. Like all the practice, I can't give up any one practice, so I do them all. Somehow manage to get by.
it feels like they serve you very well, and probably your students too. I'd like to go. I read your Energy Magazine article on embodied writing, and was so taken with the idea. For me personally, and I suspect for many of us, writing feels like such a mental exercise, and embodiment, of course, something quite different. So
Yeah.
I'd love to hear a little more about embodied writing and what that entails.
Yeah. So embodied writing, which I've been teaching for 20 something years, both in a university, but also in the community. And I teach out of my own experience. So I came to embodied writing when I found out that my writing was getting stiff, and that how do I move it out of being stiff? And I said, so when I started connecting it with my body, then the writing started flowing, and opening up to imagination, and opening up to all various ways of expression. So what I've discovered, certainly when you're doing body practices, whether it's dance or even receiving healing touch, we're off. We're going places. It's lovely. And then write. Oh, I don't even remember what happened. Oh my gosh, was that 45 minutes? It felt like 3 minutes, right? So we don't even have recollection for the most part, let alone the words to describe it. So I have found ways to kind of tap into that realm and find a way to articulate or benefit from that realm, so that you are able maybe to say what happened, or maybe to find out what is the essence and what is it that wants to carry you forward. So in embodied writing, sometimes we start with some sort of movement or body awareness, or sometimes we start with writing. And what I found is one builds on the other. So however much you're experiencing or knowing of this moment, you add on one or the other, and it grows. And so, people who have difficulty writing suddenly are writing. People are like, oh, the body. They're getting into their bodies, and then they're finding, I mean, the most common response is people are astonished by what takes place. So they open to their imagination, they open to their healing, they open to expression, they get moving, and maybe they never moved, or they get writing and maybe they've never written. So it ends up being quite a bit of a win-win. And then the insights that come out of it all are quite astounding. So
It sounds as though you have come upon or built a way to access sort of that liminal space. Yes, is that
yeah,
what's happening, or tell me more about
yeah, I would say that liminal state, which is that in-between place,
Mhm.
which is really quite lovely, if you don't mind the uncertainty of it. That, yeah, I'm building on it, or I'm unfolding it, And the thing with the liminal state is, if you say, oh, I'm there, poof, it disappears, right?
Yes.
So you got to kind of come into it sideways, like, oh, I'm here and I'm here, So yeah, I'm both tapping into it and then building on it. And whether I'm getting into it through the writing or the movement or body awareness, absolutely. And it's an important place because in many ways, I'd say it's the place where shamans live, or the place when we're doing healing work. We're in that liminal place. We're not like, oh, that's going on. Okay, that's going on. And we're, in this linear place. We're very aware of all the different sensory impressions that are coming in, sometimes from here, sometimes from the client's body, and sometimes we don't know where from, but we've opened to the space. We're open to it. And so we are receiving it perceptually.
So, what would you say are some of the benefits you've experienced or that you've seen with your students from embodied writing? Maybe a couple examples of, how it's opened something for you or a client or a student.
So, well, what readily comes to mind is some students. So, writing something they've never written before. And some are new to writing, and some one was an Oprah book selling writer. So she was like, she's good with writing, but she'd written fiction, and suddenly she was writing poetry, didn't know where it came from. So I've had some people who are doing that. So they're like developing their writing or getting over a hump or some writer's block. But then there's people who they get rid of their migraine that they've had for years. Or a really dramatic experience was with this was in the university. It was a baseball player, student, I'm in this class, okay. And he kept hearing me talk about embodiment and the importance of breath. And he wrote to me at the end of the semester. Semester had ended. And he said, I think you saved my life. He had, I can't remember the full term, his chest had was collapsing in, excavatum something. And this had happened during high school. And he was in the locker room and the other boys went, hey, look at your chest, ha, ha, ha. Shame about his body. So he didn't share what he looked like to anyone after that. He always hide. And somehow even at the doctor's office was managed to hide this. And by college, he was realizing, because every time I talk about taking full breaths, that he wasn't able to. So he finally mentioned it to his parents, who then made an appointment with the doctor. And the doctor said, if you had waited another few months, your chest cavity would have infringed on your lungs and you could have been killed by this. So that sense of being in touch with your body, he says, literally saved his life. So that's dramatic. But, the rest of us we have sensitivity to I think I shouldn't eat that food. Or maybe I won't walk into, we have little intuitions or little sensitivity that gives us helpful information. But, this material both helps you to heal, and I would say heal, makes us be much more aware and in tune with who we are. And then whether we're writing or moving for creative reasons, or we're doing it to find out who we are, so self-discovery. So it works on all those levels.
Well, and it's interesting. That's a very, very powerful and dramatic story. And I'm also hearing in that someone who had probably disconnected from their body in many ways, even though they were an athlete, right? So you've got to be there enough to be an athlete, but disconnected from the chest, which contains the heart, right? And all of this important stuff. And that the writing was a process that allowed him to even look at that and experience that again.
Right, right. And you know, you think that athletes are connected to their body or embodied, or dancers are, and not necessarily, because athletes are, you know, focus on the win, like push past your pain, right? And then
Yeah.
dancers are said, here's the choreography, do it.
Do it.
Don't feel who you are. So I go the reverse way. I go, feel who you are. So
Wow.
my athletes end up getting much more limber, stretched, in touch, and they play better, they tell me, right? And dancers too, they end up showing up in a richer way within their body. So yeah, that was a surprise to me, because I always thought that those groups of people would have a higher intelligence in those areas.
Yes.
And maybe they do compared to the average person, but they still have a large amount of disembodiment as well.
Wow, that's so interesting. I mean, it makes sense as you say it, but not
Right,
what we could imagine or what we would assume.
right.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. And so, you know, so I've been doing that work, and it has felt like important work. It satisfies me deeply. And then in this recent book on ecosomatics, I mean, this is born out of my concern of for the earth, and how our disembodiment and our trauma keeps us out of touch with what is growing, you know, around us, the life around us, whether it's a caterpillar or an oak tree. And to connect more to, I mean, in some ways, what some of us might have done, I certainly did this when I was a child, that the woods were alive, right? Everything was, and we were in awe and fascination.
Yes.
And now we just kind of mow our lawns, or, you know, I mean, we stay
Or not even, we just have someone else.
somewhere
We don't even do it
else,
ourselves anymore. We're not even that connected anymore.
not connected. And so this connection, because look at, I mean, what just recently happened? Wildfire in Canada, right? Why is that caused? Because of our mistreatment of the earth. And guess what? We are, how many miles away am I? 600 miles away from the Canadian border, approximately. I haven't looked at a map. And yet my air was not healthy to breathe. So, you know, everything is connected. So not only is it, I think, our responsibility to keep our environment as healthy as possible, keep our body as healthy as possible. And so that when, you know, in this overlap, which is this ecosomatics, this overlap, I mean, we're raising the health for self, for other. And when I say other, I mean anything that is living, including, you know, soil, which is living. So really important work that for us to be doing right now.
So important. And, you know, you even look at the new physics and all of that, and, you know, we are all very interconnected. So naturally, you know, what we are doing affects it. What is occurring for it affects us. So, you know, here's the earth with this damage, and here we are in the state that we're in. And, you know, it becomes that sort of descending loop, if you will, and can just as well become that ascending spiral. Yeah.
Right, right. And those of us who do energy healing, I mean, we can experience all those interconnections. So, which is why I make sure that my healing room is clear. You know, I clear it regularly. If so, maybe with I ring a bell quite a lot, where I just move the air around, intention.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Ground, ground, ground.
Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah.
That kind of brings us to another question I wanted to ask, also about your new book, Ecosomatics. I just love that word. Um, Maybe you could share with us something practical for all of us as energy practitioners. What might be an important practice that we should be doing right now? And what are you doing for yourself these days?
Yeah. Every day my practices shift. But I want to go back to the importance of grounding.
Mm.
Because I've been doing that when I was training as a dancer. Okay, that's to keep yourself from not falling over. We do it as healing touch practitioners, right? Connect with the earth, connect with the energy of the earth, and let the healing or the composting, right, of the earth. So it's like earth, human, earth. I mean, we are earth, but up, down, although I don't know what's up because earth is round. Um, but I do a practice regularly where I really open the soles of my feet and really feel the energy of the earth. So, and there's times it's my imagination, and there's times that it's such a visceral experience that I can feel the energy circulating from me into the earth, earth into me. So, and we often do that as a preparation before we work on a client. So, but we can be doing it for ourselves as well. And for me, it's also about being in communication with the earth. So we're not just like walking across from point A to B. No, we're walking with earth. And sometimes if your awareness is open, earth may speak to us in whatever way it does. So, during the pandemic, my go-to was laying flat on the earth. It's kind of, okay, I don't know what this is. I've never gone through a pandemic before. I don't know how to bring my anxiety down because I don't know what's coming for us. So I did some major earthing then. And that just seemed to be the thing that made the most sense. So, that's like a great practice, which many of us are already doing. And I'd say continue or take it to the next step. Or, so sometimes I'll do it when we're moving. And can you feel the energy moving as you move, coming with you? So, I'm a regular meditator. So that's my go-to as well. I've been doing that since I was 16. So I'm a long time meditator. Yeah. And breath. It just changes. Probably my aura is different color now, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah. What color did it become?
So it just got lighter, like more, I don't know what the word would be, lighter.
Yeah. Yeah. With just a single breath that took a second. So that's a really important practice. Just easy breath, which I know is difficult because as soon as you say focus on your breath, people suddenly can't breathe.
Right? We constrict, right? Oh, think about it. There's something I have to do.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing and so wise. And it's interesting because even the grounding and breath exercises that you're sharing with us are, of course, also more embodied. So take us to that more embodied state as
Right.
well.
And my new book is full of exercises for that. So there's a book on my somatic writing, also full of exercises, because I really want people to be able to be at home and try something out.
Beautiful.
Don't take a workshop with me, but at home, in the comfort of your
I'd
own.
love to come take a workshop with you.
Okay, so you might have to leave. No, you're in Texas. I may be in Houston. Um, Somebody's actually talking to me about coming to Houston. We don't no timeline yet, so I don't know.
Well, we'll keep that in mind. And when I get back up to Virginia, we can do that then too.
Okay.
So, final question. I would love to ask any last inspiration, guidance, tips or tools you might want to share with our readers.
Okay, I'll give you one word because this has been my breakthrough practice the last 2 years, and it has to do with softening. Soften. And things really unfold.
Even
So
as you just say that, I can feel my body change.
yeah, softening. And sometimes I focus on a specific place or general place, but that's a critical one, softening.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And what a lovely, aware, embodied note to close on. I want to thank you so very much, Cheryl. It's been a joy talking with you, getting to know you, learning about your books. I'm so eager to read the new one that just came out and that is on my Kindle. We will also share the information about your books with our readers as well.
Great, great.
It's an absolute joy. Thank you so very much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
All
And
right.
hello to everybody out there.
Yes, indeed. Thanks
Yeah.
to all our subscribers. It's a wonderful experience to have you with us today. Thank you. Thank you. Be well.
All right.